Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back. Come in, sit down. I'm very glad you're here tonight. I want to ask you something before we begin. If someone spent 27 years trying to destroy everything you believed in, locking you in a cell, taking your freedom, separating you from your family, treating you as less than human, what would you feel toward them? Most of us would answer honestly. Anger, bitterness, perhaps something that never fully healed. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. He had every reason to come out consumed by hatred. The apartheid regime that imprisoned him had done things to him and to his people that I will not minimize by listing quickly. And yet, the story I want to tell you tonight is not about what Mandela felt toward his enemies. It is about what he chose to feel toward a 19-year-old farm boy who showed up one morning to be his guard. His name was Christo Brand, and what passed between these two men, across the bars of a maximum security prison, across the divide of apartheid South Africa, across more than 40 years of life, is one of the most quietly extraordinary things I have ever had. The privilege of sharing. Let me take you to Robben Island, 1978. Robben Island sits 11 kilometers off the coast of Cape Town, in the cold waters of Table Bay. It was South Africa's most feared prison, the place. The apartheid government sent the people it considered most dangerous, the people it most needed the world to forget. Nelson Mandela had been there since 1964. He had been convicted of plotting to overthrow the state and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was 60 years old. He had spent 18 of those 27 years on this island, quarrying limestone in the blazing sun, living in a concrete cell, 2 meters square, allowed one visitor every 6 months for 30 minutes. The apartheid government called him a terrorist. For most of those years, it was illegal in South Africa to publish his photograph or quote his words. He was a man being systematically erased. Into this world, in 1978, arrived an 18-year-old white Afrikaner boy named Christo Brand. Brand had grown up on a farm, 2 hours from any city. He was, by his own description, politically naive. He had played as a child with the black and mixed race, children on the farm, and thought nothing of it. He simply had not yet been taught to think of the world, the way the apartheid system needed him to think of it. He had taken the job at Robben Island because there was not much else available to a young man with his background and limited education. On his first day, he asked the sergeant what these prisoners had done. The sergeant said they were terrorists, that they had tried to kill South African children on the border, that they were dangerous men who deserved to be where they were. Christo Brand walked down the corridor and opened the first cell door. He found, as he later described it, old men sleeping on blankets on the floor. Polite, neatly dressed, quietly dignified old men. One of them looked up at him with calm, steady eyes. That was Nelson Mandela. Brand said that his first thought, against everything he had been told, was that these did not look like terrorists. They looked like grandfathers. The rules on Robben Island were strict and deliberately cruel. Visits from family were limited and supervised. Mail was censored. Contact was controlled. The whole system was designed to remind these men, every single day, that they were nothing. But Christo Brand began to notice things. He noticed that Mandela never complained, that he treated every person he encountered, guard or prisoner, powerful or powerless, with the same steady courtesy, that he seemed genuinely interested in the lives of the young guards, asked them about their families, remembered their names, that when disputes arose between prisoners and guards, Mandela was invariably the one who helped find a resolution. Brand began to bend the rules. Small things at first. He started smuggling in items Mandela wanted, whole wheat bread, and Mandela's favorite hair pomade. In return, Mandela encouraged Brand to continue his education. When Brand had a motorcycle accident and needed legal advice he couldn't afford, Mandela, who had trained as a lawyer before his imprisonment, helped him work through it. Mandela taught Brand, slowly and without ever saying, so directly, how to see the world differently. A friendship was forming in a place specifically, designed to make friendship impossible. And then came the day that neither man ever forgot. It was a rainy winter afternoon. Winnie Mandela had come on the long ferry trip from Cape Town to visit her husband. She had done something that could have had devastating consequences for everyone involved. She had brought a baby. The baby was Mandela's granddaughter, 4 months old. Her name was Zalika. Babies were not permitted on Robben Island. The rules were explicit. Brand knew that if he was caught smuggling anything to these prisoners, the minimum sentence was 5 to 10 years in prison. Winnie Mandela pushed the baby into Brand's arms. Brand stood in the corridor for a moment, holding a 4-month-old baby, knowing exactly what he was risking. He walked to Mandela's cell. He opened the door. He put the baby in Nelson Mandela's arms. I give him the baby, and he takes the baby. And he was shivering a little bit. And he's got some tears in his eyes, Brand later recalled. He was quite emotional at that point. Nelson Mandela, the man, the apartheid government, had spent 14 years trying to erase, held his granddaughter for the first time in a concrete cell on an island in the South Atlantic, with tears running down his face. When it was over, Mandela looked at Brand and said quietly, "Thank you. I know you can lose your job for that. Now it's a secret between us, just you and me." Brand describes what happened in that moment with words I find almost unbearably moving. He says, "This moment that passed between us, this silent understanding from man to man, meant everything to him. We became allies for life." They kept that secret for nearly 20 years. Through the remainder of Mandela's imprisonment, through his release in 1990, through the dismantling of apartheid, through everything. In 1994, Nelson Mandela became the first democratically elected president of South Africa. The man the government had tried to erase was now the leader of the nation. Christo Brand was working as a lowly civil servant, while South Africa's new constitution was being drafted in parliament. One day, Mandela arrived by helicopter for a meeting with the assembled members of parliament. He walked into the room. He saw Brand. He stopped. He went to Brand. And in front of all the members of parliament, he said loudly, "You know who this person is?" And then the president of South Africa told the story of his friendship with his former prison guard to an audience of the most powerful people in the country. Brand was given a job in Mandela's office. When Brand's son was killed in a car accident years later, Mandela was the first person to telephone him. "When he phoned me," Brand said, "you could feel he was half a part of my family." They continued to see each other for the rest of Mandela's life. The last time they met, about 2 years before Mandela died, Brand brought his wife and son and his own grandchild to visit. Mandela wanted to hold Brand's grandchild. The baby was a little shy of the old man. You could see he really reached out for touching. A child at that moment, Brand recalled. The man who had once held Brand's granddaughter in a prison cell, now reaching for Brand's grandchild in the home of a former president. The circle was complete. My dear friends, I have been sitting with this story for a while now, and what strikes me most is a simple question. What if Brand had not opened the door? Not on that first day, not on any of the days that followed. What if he had done exactly what the system asked him to do? Keep his distance, enforce the rules, treat the man in the cell as the terrorist he had been told was there. He would have kept his job. He would have been safe. He would have followed orders. And he would have missed everything. He would have missed a friendship that lasted 40 years. He would have missed the moment. A grandfather held his granddaughter for the first time. He would have missed the phone call that came when his son died, from a man who cared enough to be first. He would have missed being introduced by a president to a parliament as a person worth knowing. And Mandela. If Mandela had done what hatred would have been entirely justified in doing, if he had looked at the young white Afrikaner guard and decided to see only the system that had imprisoned him, he would have missed a friend, a genuine, loyal, lifelong friend found in the last place anyone would have thought to look. This is what I keep returning to. In a society designed to make these two men enemies, they chose something else. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small increments, a piece of bread, a legal question, a door left open. Apartheid built walls. Mandela and Brand built a friendship through the walls. One small act of humanity at a time. Christo Brand said of Mandela, "He was my prisoner. He became my friend, and he was like a father to me." Mandela spent 27 years being told he was less than human. He responded by spending those same 27 years teaching the people around him how to be more human. That, I think, is the most extraordinary thing of all. Thank you so much for spending this evening with me, my dear friends. Until next time, open the door. You never know what you might find on the other side. Good night.